Good day, and welcome to the 80th episode of the series Decolonizing the Mind. Um, I'm doing a sub-series which is called the soap opera of President Tom Trump, and look at how the world is changing week by week. So what happened last week? I'll discuss things that are going on the West Bank, the Fatah-Hamas relationship, Lebanon, the bombing of Iran, which is in the making, Ukraine, and then China, Venezuela, which tells you something about how the global world is changing now. Now, um, if we look into developments in Palestine, Gaza obviously takes a lot of attention, but there are things going on in the West Bank, a repetition of the Nakba, which is aimed at pushing all the Palestinians out of Palestine and Gaza and in the West Bank. The West Bank is 15 times larger than Gaza, has 3.3 million Palestinians, and in the West Bank there are 700,000 Israelis living in illegal settlements. So the settlers attack on a daily basis. The Palestinians, they block the roads to the communities, they hinder access to essential services and livelihoods, they destroy water reservoirs, they cut off vital resources for Palestinians herding communities. And in 2024, 2,500 hectares, 6,100, more than 6,000 acres were classified as state land by Israeli authorities, meaning that they just take the land of Palestinians and make it state-owned lands, and and then they start killing people, taking them out of their houses by the hundreds. It has less attention because it's not done by airplanes and the bombings and the physical destruction, which is also going on in the West Bank. So that is a horror that continues in the other side of Palestine. And then we saw images in the Western press of Palestinians in Gaza protesting against Hamas. And what happened is that obviously people are desperate in Gaza. And Fatah, who works closely with Israel to oppress Palestinians in the West Bank, they attack resistance, they arrest people, they operate with the Israeli intelligence, also operating in Gaza, and they were organizing those protests, obviously knowing that the Western press would seize on it, and they get paid for it because they get money from Israel, the EU, the US, and Arab states, and these are the ones that are pressing Fatah to fight against resistance. And I'm talking about hundreds of millions that the Palestinian Authority is receiving from all these countries. And yet, despite all this, last week, the US intelligence community issued a report that says that even in degraded form, Hamas continues to pose a threat to Israel's security. It says that the group retains thousands of fighters, and much of its underground infrastructure in the tunnels has been untouched. So they use the ceasefire to reinforce and resupply its military ammunition stock so it can fight again. And it notes that Hamas has the ability to resume low-level guerrilla resistance and to remain the dominant political action in Gaza for the foreseeable future. So the propaganda that comes out of Netanyahu saying we are destroying Hamas, the US intelligence community, which has vast resources in collecting intelligence, is just saying the opposite. Now, then in Lebanon, Sheikh Qasim, now the Secretary General of Hezbollah, says that you must understand what Hezbollah did. Israel tried a large-scale military invasion of Lebanon during the recent war, and they didn't succeed. So he says the goal of Hezbollah is Israel was the expansion of its control of Lebanon destiny, the eradication of resistance, and the total control of Lebanon, backed by the US. And he said that what the resistance did is frustrated these goals and obliged the enemy to accept ceasefire, which they break by the day. And the government of Lebanon now is a pro-Israeli and a pro-American government. And he's saying to them, we give you the chance to defend, we give the state the chance to defend Lebanon, but our patience is not endless. And we are not weak in the face of all these US-Israeli schemes. And if we reach a situation in which the enemy launches limitless attacks and blatantly violates the ceasefire, Hezbollah will not keep watchful. And he said, over the past week, I received several letters from a number of Hezbollah fighters asking for permission to carry out martyrdom attacks. So he's saying, we are ready to fight, and our cadres are motivated, very well motivated to go into it. Now, another interesting development this week is that US President Donald Trump last Sunday threatened Iran with bombings and secondary tariffs if they don't reach an agreement on the nuclear program. So he sent a letter to Iran for direct negotiation. Iran said, no, we don't need direct negotiation. We could have back-channel communications, but your tone and the way you operate doesn't lead to direct negotiation. And then Trump said, if an agreement is not reached, there will be bombings. There will be bombings like never before. As he always does, being very hyperbolic in his statements. So there are US bombers flying to Diego Garcia, which is an island there in the Pacific, and from there, there's a US carrier moving towards Iran now. So they are preparing for bombing Iran. But Iran is prepared for conventional war. So only if they come nuclear, things will change. We don't know how. The commander of the aerospace division of the Revolutionary Guard has unveiled a missile megacity, which is there are a lot of these facilities, underground cities, and the megacities, the footage which was published about it, shows thousands of ballistic missiles in the underground facilities. And he says we are still planning to retaliate against Israel, because people will say, oh, they are promising, why don't they do it? When the time is right. You don't just bomb because we say we bomb, you retaliate when the situation is there. And the situation is now that Trump might initiate the bombing. Then the other development in Ukraine. What happened? There were negotiations in Saudi Arabia, and they agreed, the US and Russia, that the United States will help restore Russia's access to the world market for agriculture and fertilizer exports, lower maritime insurance costs, and enhance access support and payment system. So going back to SWIFT. And they remove restriction on trade finance operation. And they will work towards achieving a durable and lasting peace. Now, that was in Saudi Arabia. And then political strategist Michael Pavlov, who worked in Ukraine, says something interesting. He said that in the non-public part of the negotiations in Jeddah, Ukraine lost big. And he says now it's a matter of the regime's survival of its top officials, he says politically and even physically. So he says decisions have already been made about Zelensky. He and his entourage realize the gravity of the situation. The Americans show them data about their financial resources around the world, and that the Americans will fully control those data, those resources. And they were told by the Americans that they could be prosecuted internationally, including in American courts. So they are threatening Zelensky, look, you got money, basically you stole a lot of money and they have evidence for it. We could prosecute you in American court, and kidnap you and put you in American jail. So this is a big thing, what's going on behind the scene, the heavy-handed approach of the Americans. And now Zelensky, seeing all this, is preparing for elections in July. He wants to catch his competitors by surprise, and he instructed his office to start working on the elections. And he thinks that at the end of April there will be a ceasefire agreement. But then Trump goes a step further. He is proposing a deal that would give control of Ukraine's investment landscape, leaving out European allies. So after peace, the deal would mean this. They set up an international development finance corporation that controls the funds that are needed for rebuilding Ukraine. The US gets the right of first offer on all infrastructure and natural resource investment in Ukraine. The US would have first claim on profits from this investment, which would be transferred into a US-controlled restructuring fund. The US government would take priority in purchasing Ukraine's metals, minerals, oil and gas before other parties. Ukraine would also be forbidden from selling critical minerals to strategic competitors of the US. And this fund, this Development Finance Corporation, would maintain a golden share, meaning allowing it to block certain decisions. The board would have 5 members, 3 appointed by the US and 2 by Ukraine. Europe is out of the picture, and Ukraine would not have the power to intervene in the fund's daily management. And the deal doesn't give Ukraine any future security guarantee. If you don't want to know what colonialism is, that's what DTM all is about. This is the colonization of Ukraine by the United States in the 21st century. The other thing which I found interesting was that last week Trump said he's pissed as Putin. That is the word he used. He's pissed as Putin because now it appears that Putin is not behaving as he had expected. He thinks that Putin would say, oh, my friend, I love you. Let's do everything that you say. And there was an interview with Steve Witkoff, which is the envoy of Trump in Palestine and Ukraine. And he gave an interview where he said, oh, the relation between Putin and Trump is so great that when Trump, during the election campaign, was shot in his ear, that Putin went to a church and that said prayer to Trump, and oh, that is a sign of the fantastic relation. And now Putin is saying to Trump, look, I have a lot of demands on Ukraine, or how we are going to settle Ukraine. It's not easy. And he suggested to put Ukraine, to remove Zelensky, put Ukraine under UN administration. It was done with, former Yugoslavia in Sarajevo and so. So he says that is something we could do, which obviously Trump doesn't want, because Trump wants to control and colonize Ukraine. So he says he's pissed, and if Putin doesn't change his behavior, he will put tariffs on things. And he thinks tariffs, economic boycott, that is the magic answer and solve all the problems. So look what he did with Venezuela. He put 25% tariffs on all the countries that purchase oil from the Caribbean. And Venezuela is the 12th largest oil exporter to China. And what does China say? China says China opposes brutal interference in the affairs of other countries, and China is asserting that his country will not stop buying Venezuelan crude oil. So Trump can say whatever he wants and can threat whatever he wants. In the US, he has the power to impose his will, but outside the US, that's not the case. So that was happening last week. Next week I'll be traveling, so I won't do a podcast, and the week after that, April 14th, will be the next podcast. So thank you very much for your attention and hope to see you soon.